commercial brewer and a beer historian, specialising in recreating as accurately as possible the beers of the past. But it's not just about beers. Everywhere around the country, probably everywhere around the world, it's drinking culture, its drinking scene has always been influenced by the beers that have been made there, obviously, and the people that live there have influenced the beers. So we're setting out with the Beer Tourist to find out about the history of the cities and the beers that were made there and the people that made them. We're going to be looking through the records of places, looking into what beers that they made, when they made them, what was going on at the time in the world, and how that influenced each other. And we're going to also be talking to local beer experts about the more modern beer scene, how it's changed in the last 10 to 15 years as craft beer came in, how much influence it had on the craft beer movement, and then seeing what the drinking scene is at the moment. So if you wanted to come to somewhere, like today we're in Manchester, and see where the local beers are, where to find them, what they're like, who made them, this is the programme for you. Cheers! At the start of the Industrial Revolution, hundreds and thousands of people were flooding into the cities, and streets like this one, this tiny narrow street, is a remnant of the area. Each side of this, there's lots of housing going all around it, and what you'd find was every third street or so there'd be somebody making beer, and they would sell it to their neighbours, and then after a while the ones making the most popular beer were able to buy out their neighbours or get them to start selling their beer through them. So what we started to see here was the foundation of a brew pub, and not like we'd recognise today, but it was the start of it. And these kept growing and kept growing until it got to the point where we started to see the foundation, the beginnings of the family brewers. It would be one family making beer and selling it out through multiple different outlets. And when it comes to the family breweries, Manchester is unique in this, in that it still has 4 of them. Most cities, if they have any at all, only have the one family brewer left, whereas Manchester's got 4 of them still going: Holt's, Hythe, Robinson's and Lees. Okay, Greater Manchester area, because we're including Stockport and Salford into this. But it is incredibly unique. Now, these have survived by being strong enough companies where they've never been able to be taken over with hostile takeovers, but they've also been able to maintain themselves as a business, producing their beers to sell out within their own pubs, within the overall area here. And as I say, it's unique. Nowhere else has more than one family brewer. More than one family brewer. Manchester's got 4, and that is possibly a sign of how good the beer was, or just how much people around here like to drink. So at the start of the Industrial Revolution, to make sure there was enough beer for all of these workers that were flooding into the cities, proper breweries were formed and set up. The houses that were making beer just couldn't keep up with demand for it. So these big breweries were created, one of which in 1778 was Caister and Frey, which is possibly the most well-known Manchester brewery, but not by that name. It wasn't until 1853 that it was taken over by one Henry Boddington, who renamed the brewery Boddington's Brewery, which we should all have heard of. And he changed the style of what they were making as well, because currently they were making miles, which is what everybody drank, but the times were changing in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, and people wanted pale ales. So he produced Boddington's Bitter, which absolutely flew out. It became really well known in the local area, and it was incredibly popular. And that carried on, so much so that in 1989, Whitbread, who previously had helped the brewery survive by being a bit of an angel investor and pumping some money into them to stave off previous hostile takeovers, took it over themselves. And they then later on, in 2000 in fact, sold it to AB InBev, because it by then became a massive global brand. and it was worth a lot of money. So AB InBev took it, they took the beer, it's all been brewed elsewhere by then, and 4 years later, 2004, they closed the brewery, and all that's left of it is this car park that I'm stood in here, which is very pretty, isn't it? And that new college campus that stood behind me there. It's a shame that such a big recognisable landmark has gone, but it's progress, I guess. So from the end of the Industrial Revolution through to the mid-1900s, the family brewers pretty much had it their own way until the regional breweries and the nationals and the multinationals started to come in. And as a bit of a kickback to that lack of choice for the drinker, in 1996, this very unassuming building here on the edge of Manchester's Gay Court Village was opened up as a brew pub called Machinair, and it was incredibly different for the time, incredibly futuristic. The interior was bright white and bright orange, and it looked like a spaceship set. And it brought in incredibly fine dining. It had a wood-fired pizza oven, which was unique at the time. And all of the beers were brewed on site, right in the middle of the venue. The microbrewery was there on display for everyone to see. And overnight, it became a bit of a sensation, and all of the local rich and famous, all of the soap stars, everybody was coming here. There was even a very famous story about Alex Ferguson getting stuck in the lift here. Unfortunately, it closed in 2000, and the guy who set it up, Alistair Hook, he went off down to London and set up the Meantime Brewery, which was even bigger and even more famous. Now, when Machinair closed in 2000, it didn't leave Manchester without any brew pubs. There were a few small breweries operating, and they were doing reasonably well, and possibly the most famous of those is the Marble Brewery. Now, this founded in '98 in a small brewery in the back of the Marble Arch pub, and it grew, and the pub became incredibly popular for its beers and for its stance on not serving any of the nationals. And it got more and more popular to the point where they had to move the brewery out of the back of the pub, just down the road a bit. And several years later, in fact just a couple of years ago, they had to move it again. It had just grown to the point where they just couldn't keep up with demand on the premises that they had. They needed a bigger brewery, which needed a different, a bit bigger place to put it. So the brewery is no longer attached to the pub, but the pub is still there, and it still is the flagship pub of the Marble Brewery. And seeing as I'm here, it would be very rude not to pop in for a pint. So I'm going to. Now, John, you are a local beer expert. I think everybody is quite happy to admit that, really.
Embarrassingly, yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to say like you've been around the scene or anything like that, but you're not. Are you originally from Manchester?
No, I'm from Newark in Nottinghamshire.
Newark, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But you've been here quite a while, and you've been involved in the local camera groups for quite a while. And,
yeah.
And you're the editor of one of the was the
opening times,
the main camera magazine. Yeah. And Lianne, you say you've been in Manchester now about 5 years?
Yeah, just over 5 years. And I'm also from the Midlands, but I'm from West Midlands originally, rather than the East Mids. And I moved up here just over 5 years ago, and I've got very involved in the local beer scene.
You're a beer tour guide, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you know all of the modern stuff as well.
Yeah, indeed. So go do microbrewery tours, but also tasting tours as well in some of the new craft beer bars, particularly around the Northern Quarter.
So you do really quite nice. So I mean, most of us are going to start out with just a bit about the history. I know John started to try and tell us a little bit of the story here, and I had to hold him back because it was really great. So I previously mentioned about Machinair, and you say that the first brew pub was actually Lastigari.
It was, yes.
Tell us about Lastigari. Please tell us what you just told us about.
Well, the Lastigari, the brewery was in the cellar, and it was it was very much of its time. Beers were malt extract beers, and they were very much beers of their time in the early 1980s. So they were quite brown, quite malt accented, Personally, I thought they were a bit gloppy, but some people really like them, and they're called Log 35 and Log 42 after the original Gravities.
After the what, sir?
The original Gravities.
The Gravities, right.
Yeah, we didn't have ABB then, we had original Gravity. And then occasionally they did a graduation ale, which was even heavier, thicker, gloppier beer for the student graduation. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was from 83 to about 2003.
Yeah, it kept going on for a long time. Yeah.
So it's about 20 odd years.
Oh yeah, at least. Yeah, I mean, it was it was one of the longest running breweries in fact, one of the longest running brew pubs in the country. I think.
So, I mean, I've been looking up to how long different brew pubs have been open, and they were the first in 83. And then it wasn't until 7 years later in the 90s we got a couple of the Firkin pubs.
We did. Well, in the early 90s, don't forget, we got the brewery in the cellar of the King's Arms at Cheltenham Medlock, West Coast Brewing, which was all Brendan Dobbin, the famous brewer. And he was famous. He was the first person to properly experiment with American hops, possibly in the UK, him and Sean Franklin. And his Yakima Grand Pale Ale, which was a clone of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And he originally called it Sierra Nevada Pale Ale until he was told not to by Sierra Nevada. And he did Yakima Grand Pale Ale, Yakima Grand Porter, Guiltless Dry Stout, and lots of other things.
So what sort of years was he doing the Yakima stuff?
It started about 1990-ish.
So about 1990, there was an equivalent of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale being brewed in Manchester.
As a cask beer, yes.
As a cask beer?
Yeah.
That is really quite early, isn't it?
Oh yes, it was very good too.
How close was it to Sierra Nevada?
Oh, very close. Because I remember it being a very floral beer, and of course it was all Cascade. I don't think Cascade is so floral these days because hops do evolve and change. Of course, he also did a house beer for the Crown of Deep Lake, which was Green Bullet, and that I remember being very floral and aromatic. And I've had Green Bullet beers recently, and they don't have this floral aromatic quality. So again, I presume the hops kind of evolved and doesn't bring that to the beer. But he made some fantastic stuff.
Because I do remember reading about him having a little run in Sierra Nevada. About the name.
Yeah. He set up the brewery here.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
That's about what, 98?
It's 25 years in December, isn't it? So that's been 97 then, I think.
So 98?
Yeah.
So was that after he finished his other places?
Yes, because he was a great brewer and not a very good businessman, and the King's Arms was in the middle of this terrible estate. And then he moved the brewery around the corner to another old pub called the King William IV, which was and it got vandalised and broken into, and it all went horribly wrong for him, unfortunately. But he did brew Yakima Grand Porter, and when this place was launched, he did McKenna's Revenge Porter, which was the same beer. Only that because I was sitting down there with a friend of mine and said, this really reminds me of Dobbin's Yakima Grand Porter, and he pops up from behind the bar out the south. It's exactly the same, he says. So I mean, yeah.
So when that was in 98 that this place opened up as a brewery. So it was a couple of years before Mash and Air came along, and that was kind of a completely new thing. Wow. It was a bit ahead of its time.
Oh, very much so in terms of decor.
Yeah.
Like I said, Mash bright green with orange highlights.
Right.
And I said on the VIP night, it took them ages to open it, and they rushed to get it open on VIP night. The paint wasn't dry apparently, which I think is a great stuff. And Air was all pale blue, and they did these really good pieces. And I think there's another bit further above it which did more sort of highfalutin food as well, but I never got to look there.
So was there a difference between Mash and Air then? Because I just thought that was the name of the place.
Yeah, well, Mash was more the brew pub, and Air was more the eatery, but it all sell the same beers, which I thought were a bit ordinary. They weren't cask, that didn't matter, but they really didn't deliver, I didn't think, in terms of body and flavour and anything like that. And even by the less demanding standards of those times, I don't think they delivered.
For me, reading up about the history of it did seem that one of the things it did was try to drive non-beer drinkers into the place with the brewery in the middle to let them realise that this is a brew pub, this is making beer.
Yes, absolutely.
So when it opened in 96, you still had the Lasagari brewing, you had the two Firkins brewing. So it wasn't the first brew pub in the area, and others were still going, but it was trying to appeal to a different crowd. Was that kind of like in a way, a bit forerunner to the craft beer thing?
Oh, it Well, it would be in a way. I mean, I think it was very different to everything else, much more modern than everything else. And the fact it didn't know any cask beer, very different to everything else. So, yes, that was probably one of the forerunners of, for better or for worse, the craft beer scene.
For better or for worse, there's always the worst. Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing I've been looking at is a few of the other breweries that have started up and have gone down. Because it seems that between the 80s and the 2000s, we did kind of like have the forerunners. This was like the 80s microbrewery boom. And the ones I've sort of like breweries I've sort of like seen setting out then from the 2000s to about 2012-ish. You've got Basins.
Yeah.
What were they like?
Richard Basin sadly died the other year. He first cohabited, so to speak, with a guy called David Facer, who was an ex-brewer from Boddington, head brewer of Boddington's. So there was Facer's Brewery and Basins Brewery occupying the same premises and using the same kit. And while he was there, his beers were fantastic. Hoppy pale ales and really nice stout, this sort of thing. Then when David Facer up sticks and went to North Wales and set up Facer's Brewery, which is still going strong, Richard was left to his own devices. I personally think he was a bit lazy. I don't think he cleaned his vessels properly. So all his beers suddenly had this very smoky taste.
Oh, that's not what you want unless it's a very specific type of beer.
No. I think it's probably burnt on stuff.
That's usually if an element gets burnt.
Yeah, and then he
and
he had all sorts of reasons why this happened. None of which was I'm not cleaning my kit properly.
No, you didn't buy it.
And then, of course, he downsized and moved to what was a little brewery at the Star Inn. And then, when he started there with his clean kit, the beers were back on form. Then, a few weeks later, the smokiness started creeping back in.
That's unfortunate.
It was wrong.
Yeah.
that one at the Star Inn, that was a 2-barrel kit, I think it was.
Very tiny.
Yeah, and it was just because the Star Inn, if I remember right, it's one of the first community-owned pubs in the country
It
as
was,
well.
yeah.
So that's it was a bit of a great thing for them to have a brewery out the back. But if nobody was buying the beer, maybe
we
not.
sold in the pub, but I don't know what's happened to the Star Inn or the brewery there, or it kind of fizzled out, I think.
No, they closed the brewery down, and then it was bought by one of the Newcastle breweries. I can't remember off the top of my head. Is it Bowker?
Brinkburn Street. Because I met the guy from Brinkburn Street and his oppo there who were kind of brewing sort of there.
Yeah, they were trying to get the brew pub up and running again, and they just weren't shifting enough, so they ended up just taking all the brewery back over there. Because one of the other ones I was looking at, sort of like set up at that sort of time and isn't around anymore, is Prospect. They only closed down this year as well.
I know, yes.
And it started in 2007. What a brewery they were.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, you must have tried Prospect.
I think so. I'm not completely sure, to be honest. But
Patsy Slevin was the brewer.
Yeah. Infamous for being on Oz and Clarke's Drink to Britain, or one of the Oz Clarke films.
Was she?
Yeah.
The beers were lovely.
Yeah.
The beers were really good too.
what sort of beers were they known for?
Well, it was the usual kind of cask range, really, but very well made, and she wasn't afraid of using hops either. So, I mean, it was good all round, really.
Yeah, and she started in a garage, if I remember rightly.
Yes, that's right.
This is purely from watching that TV programme as well.
I think it was her mother-in-law's garage.
Oh, right, so it wasn't even her own?
No.
I mean, the ones that, from that time as well, that's still going. The one, Phoenix, 82, that was another one that really started out with a lot of American hops.
I know. I mean, if Tony Allen hadn't died the other year, I was going to do a feature on him in opening times, because this year's 40 years since it started brewing. And his 40 years...
That's a long time.
I mean, the brewery started in Ellesmere Port, but it carried on. It's been continuous brewing. It's now in what was the old Phoenix Brewery in Haywood. So it's got the most spectacular location of any brewery, because you've got this huge... Because Tony owned the lot. I don't know who he's left it to, but it's still going. There's a huge Victorian brewery tower with Phoenix Brewery in white bricks. And his brewery's in the old malt store. But you can go around the tower, because the brewery was taken over by somebody else in the 1930s, and all the kit was taken out during the war to be melted down. But I have been around the tower, and there's all these huge holes in the floor where the vessels used to be. But inside, there's all these multicoloured Victorian tiles. It looks fantastic. Make great apartments.
Yeah.
It would make great apartments.
Yeah. Or a venue or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But that's where Joe from here, from Microbrewery, Joe got his teeth brewing at Phoenix Brewery as well, and he kind of learned the trade at this old school.
I think one or two people have been through Phoenix Brewery.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony, he used to make. Again, he used to play around with lots of hops. And again, he wasn't afraid of putting hops in his beers either. And his dark beers were good too.
And the other one that's from that era that swings to mind, and another one that is still going, it started out in 2000, is Pictish.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I've had some Pictish beers.
Yeah.
Pictish seemed to be the brewery that everyone suddenly goes, oh yeah! Never seems to advertise.
No, well,
it doesn't seem to need to. He just seems to make absolutely stunningly good beer.
he's always been very low key. I mean, set up by Richard Sutton, and he's sold out to Pete or Paul, is it, who runs it now? His beer. He chucked lots of hops around, lots and lots of hops, and he's brilliant. And he did his seasonal beers. I always say he made one of the proper American style IPAs in the country, and it came out in, was it 2001 or 2011? 2001, I think, called Blue Moon. And I know some bloggers said, well, I had a conversation with some bloggers who will remain nameless. They said, well, he never said it was an IPA. But I said, well, it was 6.5%. It had a big malt backbone, vast amount of hops thrown at it. So I believe in kind of the duck principle. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Ditto. That was
it sounds
clear.
like an IPA.
Oh, it was fantastic. Again, that was a bit of a pioneer. I think it's probably the first big West Coast IPA brewed in the UK. Again, as a cask beer.
Other than the
indeed.
I'm trying to think of where I've drank their beers now, because you don't see them around everywhere. But I've definitely maybe it's been at beer festivals.
He's almost always at the beer festivals, and I think Cask there's a pub that always has
yes,
a beer
it might be there actually.
And in the sort of like the sort of like the 2014, 2012, 2014 sort of like era up to the 2022, we've lost a few of the breweries as well, because it seemed that in about 2012 to 2014 there was a lot of breweries suddenly starting up, and I think this is like the second way. I think this is when it seems, looking at the dates, when craft really kind of came along. Because in 2012 Privateer Beers set up,
which you took over his unit.
I brought over his kit, because he was really into making sort of like English style beers with lots of American hops, and there was a huge amount of those. A year later, Foolhardy started up. In Privateer closed in 2015. I've got down there. Foolhardy only last year.
Yeah.
And that was another brew pub, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
That's a loss, I think. Another one got down as Quantum.
Yes,
And
Jay Krause, Quantum.
You know Jay Krause?
I don't, but I've heard of
He's
Quantum.
He's the
one of the lead brewers.
Yes, he's some of the head of the brewery team or something like that.
Over at Cloudwater.
Basically, he's a great brewer.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I have met him.
It's great. He's a great brewer, but he liked brewing, but he didn't like all the other rigmarole of running a brewery, so he eventually just sold it up.
Yeah.
Because he bought the kit from Shaw's Brewery in Duckinfield, which is another vanished brewery. I made a note in the 15 years ago, which is all about 15 years ago when we spoke, there were, in the 2008 Good Beer Guide, which came out just over 15 years ago, there were 21 breweries in Greater Manchester. About 9 of those have since gone. Others have been and gone ever since. In the current Good Beer Guide, Greater Manchester's got 59 breweries. And I can think of another perhaps half dozen started since that came out or in the pipeline.
It's a lot of breweries in this small area, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Because the other ones have got down here, we've got things like Carmen Smith that never really got up and running.
Yeah, shame.
Yeah. Cryptic, 3 years, from 2014 to 17. Phoenix we've just lost recently as well.
That was really sad. That was just felt quite unexpected, and obviously it's been a hard time with a lot of breweries going under recently, but that was one where they set up actually during the time I've been in Manchester, and they've been well, it seems pretty successful, very well thought of beers.
That just came out the blue.
Yeah,
it really did.
I mean, he was one of the U-Brew graduates from London. So he started out renting U-Brew kits in London, moved up to Manchester, bought in a kit, kept expanding, opened up a pub, kept expanding, opened up another pub, and then all of a sudden he just seemed to go. I think he really suffered from COVID, from the COVID pandemic.
I think they did, and it's a shame because that story you just told is exactly the story I used to love telling on the tour as well, because we would go to Beatniks, and I'd loved telling that story because it's just it's a really good story, and it shows how, like, for him, like, Manchester was, at least initially a big success in moving up here. But it's just sad.
It was quite education for him, because when he moved up here, moved the brew up here, he had no intention to make cask beer. It's only when he moved to Manchester he found, people actually drink a lot of cask, and it's usually well kept in the pubs. So he started making. It was only the move to Manchester that prompted him to make successfully cask beer.
Had some great ones. I really personally liked the 2 AM Poet. Extra pale ale that they had on cask. That was just so drinkable.
He was a really nice guy, and he did make some really nice beers.
It's nice that the bar's still there as well.
Yes.
I think one of the other things with him is, as well, with Beatniks, was they always had one gluten-free beer on, and they had a dedicated line for that in their pub. And that's on the gluten-free side of things. We've also got First Chop in the Manchester area, who are a pure gluten-free brewery, and he started doing that when it wasn't popular. So it was kind of it was a nice sort of like thing to see, and he's since taught a lot of other people how to make gluten-free beer. So.
And he's still, I remember when I first moved to Manchester, living in the Green Quarter, we had a little co-op in our building, and you could get First Chop beers in that co-op. So clearly, there's a good market for those kind of beers.
Oh yeah.
And the other one I've got listed on here is 5-0 Brew Co.
Don't know that one.
Oh, this was Jamie, who.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, who was not the manager. He was one of the full-time people at Port Street Beer House.
Yeah, I should have done that, because I ordered. I sold some of his bottles across the bottle and can buy one at Stockport Beer Festival. Yes, he was great.
He was.
He's now in Portland.
Yeah, he's now running a bottled beer shop in Portland. But he was the one that kind of pioneered brewing in your garage. He was the one that did all of the work to find out from HMRC, environmental health, training centres, everything else, what you needed to do to register your garage at home as a brewery. And then he shared that knowledge around, so that's why so many other small breweries in this area, including myself when I did it, were able to suddenly start out. So
And are there any at the moment that we know of that are in garages?
Yes.
Because I need to check them out.
Up north is Redditch in Stockport.
Yes, I've heard of Stockport.
I keep meaning to go and see. I bumped into one of them at Ventile Brewery Tap, and it's in the garage of a semi-detached house in Redditch.
Yeah, well, I live in Levenshulme, so I'm really close to Redditch. So I've been to Ventile before, and I've been to Assembly there as well. And I'd heard rumours about a guy that was making good beer out of his garage, but
it's about 2 or 3 of them. They're all home brewers.
I can say as well, Hideaway.
Oh, that rings a bell. Are they the ones up in Salford?
Yeah.
They are, aren't they?
He's in Salford. He's currently trying to get planning permission, so that's to move in almost directly across 2 or 3 doors down from Marble.
All right.
Actually.
Okay.
And Libatory.
Of course.
Not sure about that one. Not heard that one.
He's
Timperley.
He's in Timperley. Brews out his garage there. Mostly does all of the markets.
His beers are lovely.
Yeah.
You've had at least one on Key Keg, and it was a American brown ale, and it was fantastic.
One on cask. Yeah.
Oh, and I think if it's still going, the guy in Bramwell, To the Moon, I think he's in his garage as well.
Don't even know about that.
Yeah.
So much going on.
It really is. Gone on now about the history and how the last 15 or 20 years or so has changed Manchester's brewing scene. So now can we talk about the current brewing scene and how you guys see it? Now this is where you really come into your own as well. John, you've always stayed up to date with it all. You really are very much a beer aficionado, and then you're doing tours, and everybody in there as well. So I'm really kind of hoping we can get a lot of gossip on this. Don't worry, I'm not asking for gossip.
I don't know about gossip.
But this really is kind of like why Manchester is how Manchester is in a way. So we're kind of talking about the 2014, 2016, we started having this new wave of brewers that were starting to come along. Yeah. So it's like from there, I'm basically just going to give it over to you. How have you seen the beer industry, sort of like the beer scene in Manchester change in the last mostly 10 years, really, I think it is?
It's just ever since I moved, so I moved just over 5 years ago, it's just grown and grown and grown. Like I remember when my boyfriend was trying to pitch for me to move up to Manchester from London, because he'd just got a job up here, the first place he took me to was Clarke, because he was like, look, there's this amazing brewery, and we went there and we had their I can't remember which birthday dipper it was at that point, but it was one of the probably the third birthday dipper, and and then I was sold really, and then from there it's just you discover all these other places, so like Alphabet, like Beer Nouveau, and but even since then, like I feel like there's new breweries popping up all the time, and also a trend for craft beer bars as well, and breweries that aren't even based in Manchester moving in and opening their own bars in the city so that they can get more of their beer to the Manchester consumers, which is, I think, a very interesting trend from the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, with that, you're saying that we've got Fierce Brewery, we've got a bar here, Northern Monk, we've got a bar here, Vocation, we've got a bar here. Yeah. So these are all really quite, and Fell Brewery as well.
Yeah,
so
I forgot about Fell, in Chiltern.
So there are a lot that are moving in because of the Manchester drinking scene, really, Yeah,
and I guess if you are a Scottish brewery or another northern brewery, rather than deciding to open a brew pub down in London, you look to Manchester because there is such a scene going on here, and a lot of people that know good beer. So.
Yeah, it is really vibrant. I mean, the past 10 years, it has gone bang in terms of number of breweries. And it's great that we have some. It's not just. Before, most of the breweries did the same old thing in a way. You could argue a lot of the new craft breweries do the same old thing.
Yeah.
Juicy, neat, New England IPAs and things like that. But we get some other interesting things happening. Chiltern came and went, but now we've got Balance Brewing and Blending, who have released 2 absolutely superb beers so far. And you get people like Marble, who have branched out from being generally quite a high quality but trad brewery into all sorts of different styles and formats. Big beers, sours, and things like that. And it's interesting to see how some of the older established, what we used to call the microbreweries, have started becoming much more adventurous in what they do, which is really good to see.
That's definitely true. I also think it's kind of happening the other way around as well. So some of the newer kind of, I guess, really well-known trendy breweries like Track, I guess, and Cloudwater and Beatniks before they went, unfortunately, they're embracing cask and embracing more traditional English styles more so than they were maybe when they first came on the scene.
It could well be that, the amount of experimentation, investigation you do with like the hazy juice is really, at the end of the day, a bit of a it can only go so far unless you start getting silly and putting crazy things in it. So perhaps a reinvestigation of traditional English styles, perhaps putting a bit of a modern slant on them is a much more productive way to go.
Definitely. Look at beers like Sonoma, Track Sonoma. That is, based on a traditional English ale and but with American hops.
Yes.
There's a lot of other sort of similar examples across the Manchester scene now. And I think as well, it's probably a case of like Manchester beer drinkers getting a little bit more adventurous as well. So a lot of craft beer drinkers for a while were, as you say, always wanting the juice bombs, the NEIPAs. I think some people are starting to get a bit bored of that now, and a lot of breweries have started making really, really good lagers or really good cask beers instead.
That is one thing that does seem to be very much the zeitgeist at the moment of a lot of breweries around here is lager.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is potentially since Manchester Union opened up here?
I think that's definitely a factor, because I mean they make a brilliant, many brilliant lagers, but their Manchester Union lager, as you see it in lots of restaurants now around Manchester, and lots of other pubs as well, and it's really popular, and I think. Yeah, it's definitely up to the game of a breweries.
I think that's definitely been a catalyst.
Yeah.
And Manchester Union lager is great because my local, the old Vic in Stockport, he took Foster's, it's a free house, took Foster's off, put Manchester Union on, and his lager volumes increased by a factor of 3.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I mean, this is the comms person in me now, but it's great marketing, calling yourself Manchester Union.
Oh,
and,
perfect.
All the pubs are going to want to have Manchester Union on.
And not only that, but it's also a really good lager. That's the thing.
Exactly.
It's not just cashing on the name. It's actually a really good product as well, which is that's win-win, isn't it? Really.
I had a tour on Saturday, and we were at yours, Steve, and they got for their first beer Manchester Union lager, and everyone was like, "Wow, this is lager! Like this is amazing."
That's why we have it as a house beer. Because lager is very difficult to make, and personally I think Manchester Union came along and said, right, we can do this, you can all do this, let's actually do it. And you said even, John, that the old Vic in Stockport took Foster's off, and they're selling 3 times as much Manchester Union as they were before.
Yes.
Is that
amazing.
overall sales have gone up 3 times, or is that sales come away from some of the other
No,
beers?
not at all.
Right, that is brilliant.
That is amazing. That's really amazing.
Well, of course, to do lager properly, you have to invest time in it, don't you? And of course, the danger is it becomes a really on-trend thing to make. You'll get people not investing the time. And key time, as we know, to make a proper lager, time is of the essence.
Definitely.
And not in terms of speed, but take it slowly.
I think as well, like the passion that they have for making good lager has probably just rubbed off on a lot of the other brewers as well that they've spoken to, because we don't quite so often now because they don't have their tap room open quite as often, but we used to go in there and have a little tour, and the passion for their product was so apparent.
This is because you lead brewery tours and tastings, and you go into quite a few of the breweries with groups of the public. Do you find that the brewers have that passion in pretty much everywhere that you go?
Yeah, I would say so.
And does that rub off on the public? So the people that you're taking around, do they go away with that passion for it as well?
Definitely. Like the thing that we always hear over and over again is, "Wow, I can't believe all these places exist." I've lived in Manchester for however many years, and I had no idea that there were all these amazing microbreweries and craft beer bars so close to where I live, and that I've never sort of experienced them before. So that's one thing that we get a lot of. We also get a lot of people trying things that they have never ever tried before and changing their opinions. So sometimes it will be around lager. Sometimes I'll put a lager in front of people and people are like, "Oh no, I don't like lager," and then their mind is blown and they're like, "Oh, that's not what I was expecting." And the same with then we get some people on the tours that say they only drink lager, and then we give them increasingly hoppy beers, and again, we don't convince everyone, but it's rare that people come away from the tour and don't feel like they've at least found one thing that they've not had before that is going to start being added to their regular drinking schedule.
John, you visit a lot of the breweries as well. You have done over the years that you've been doing this. How do you find that there's a lot of passion in the breweries in Manchester?
Oh, there is. I mean, they're all. Some are more exuberant than others. Yes. I think if you set up a brewery and you're not passionate about what you do, you're wasting your time really. So if you're passionate about it, then and you invest in the product, then you'll probably make good beer. A lot of the best breweries I know, both in the UK and elsewhere, said we make beer that we like to drink. That's what. And if other people like to use as well, that's the bonus. And if you do that, and you got your passion in, and you got your personal involvement in that beer, you're going to make good beer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all had from time to time a beer in a pub, and not because the beer's been badly kept, but it's just a horrible beer.
Yeah.
And you think, well, somebody somewhere has tried that and said, "Oh, that's fine. We'll sell that to people."
Yeah.
And you wonder, and I said, you think, where's the passion of the people that make that beer? You know, because that does happen. Something else I've noticed though, whether this is perhaps why people on the craft scene have perhaps turned into Caskimals as well, is that one thing that has happened over the past 10, 15 or more years is that how a lot of stronger beer is now widely available and drunk as a matter of course. I remember back in the day when I started in Camry in the 80s, you get a bit 5.5%. Oh, be careful now, 5.5%. Oh, just half at the end of the night. No, and they were strong beers.
Yeah.
And now 5.5% is.
You don't think that much of a 5.5%,
No,
do you?
you don't.
Just, you know.
And it could be that people are now looking to perhaps, whether it's a health thing or I don't know, they are looking perhaps to drink not weak or not so much strong beer. I don't know. I mean, something's happened over the past few years is that a lot of people drink a lot more strong beer a lot more often than they used to do.
People are more accepting as well now, I think, of the different measures that
Yes.
we have.
Oh,
So
yes.
Especially in like a lot of the craft beer pubs and bars that are, easy to find everywhere in Manchester now. People are gradually becoming more accepting of, actually, that's the Imperial Stout. You don't really want a pint of that, and actually, we won't serve you a pint of that. I think that's definitely happening, and I would say in the past year there seems to be a little bit of a trend as well of quite very good low ABV beers.
Oh yes.
That's starting to happen more and more.
Yes.
Table beers and 2.5% beers that people can carry on drinking all day.
And perhaps also why miles have a sudden.
Yes.
I mean, Clarke have done a couple of miles. We're in our Camry branch, we was a Mile Magic, it's a 6-week motion mile, it's a mile trail, and for a beer that's supposedly dying, we identified at least 66 different miles available in the participating pubs in that 6-week period. So,
on the subject of the miles around here, the family brewers have always done decent miles. Me personally, I can never remember if it's Holt's or Hyde do one that's always available. I think they both do it, but depending on where you go.
I mean, Robinsons don't do one anymore. Holt's do a cask mild that's regularly in about a dozen pubs, if that. Hyde's do 2 miles. They do the thing that's now called 1863 light bitter. Started life a couple of name changes ago as Best Mild. It's the same beer. And they also do a beer that's now called Dark Ruby, which again a couple of name changes ago started life as mild. And one or the other of those is in most Hyde's pubs actually. These dark, I think it's called, and that's not in all of their pubs by a long shot.
Interesting that they've changed the name of the beers though to like lose mild, but now mild seems to be coming back a little bit with a lot of craft breweries. It's had a little bit of a popular period.
Yes, that really took me by surprise. Of all the things that's going to have a bit of a moment, mild is probably way down the list.
Well, of course, there's the new Blunderbuss brewery that's opened as well, and they did a mild.
They launched with a dark mild, didn't they? I mean,
I don't think they launched with it, but they launched with some standard beers.
Yeah.
But once they got settled and they allowed to brew a bit of free reign, they said, right, what are you going to brew? Mild.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
And there's a huge amount of publicity that they put into that.
Yeah.
And I think riding on that publicity, because mild's not a long beer to make, it doesn't take that long in the brewery. I think a few of the other, because they let people know it was coming, a few of the other breweries like, well, let's jump on that and let's get mild out as well.
I remember for about a week or so on my Twitter, I couldn't get past anything for seeing pictures of people drinking the Blunderbuss Mild.
Oh, I know. I never got to try it.
No, I've not actually
You didn't get to try it either?
No.
Oh, you missed out, it was quite nice.
Was it? That's a shame.
It was a collab with Thornbridge, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it was brewed, but it's brewed at Thornbridge or brewed at
I
Blunderbuss.
don't
I
know.
think it was brewed at Blunderbuss, because there wasn't a huge amount of it, and the Blunderbuss kit is a lot smaller than the
I
Thornbridge
think
one.
they've worked with Thornbridge before as well, haven't they, on another beer, so that makes sense.
So, I'm going to ask that. So, what are your, not so much your opinions, but your thoughts on the current breweries that we've got around here? I mean, off the top of your head, the ones that you, I mean, I'm not going to say name ones you hate, because that's really bad, and an admission isn't going to be sort of like an admission to say, oh, I really don't know. But which breweries are you actually really liking at the moment?
I'll go first if you like.
Oh yeah, you go first while I gather my thoughts.
I'm really into track at the moment. I know that's not necessarily a cool thing to say because everyone's into track at the moment, but
There is a reason.
there is a reason. I think they've opened last October. They opened their new tap room, which is amazing. Which I think was just really nice to see after a period of time where they didn't really have a tap room. Obviously, we had COVID as well, which obviously set a lot of breweries back a while, but they've just got such an amazing array of beers on at any given time. I'm a big fan of a West Coast IPA, and they always have at least 2 or 3 really good ones on. And they're making some great lagers as well. And then obviously Sonoma as well is just a very drinkable beer. So that's one of mine. I'm very impressed by what I've had from Ventar Brewery so far. I'm going to rep my Reddish, my local Reddish area. Again, they've done a really good West Coast IPA, also a black IPA, which you don't see so often anymore, and Steelfish as well, are another brewery that I've been able to sample recently, and very impressed by everything I've had from them.
Steelfish are brewing on the Vental's kit now as well.
Yes,
I think there's a lot of knowledge share going on there.
Definitely, and I couldn't believe it when I bumped into Simon from Steelfish in Track actually after lockdown, and he gave me a Steelfish badge, which I'm not wearing today actually, and I was like, "You're Steelfish," and he was like, "Yeah, did you not know?" And I was like, "No." But amazing.
That's interesting because the Steelfish guys are both ex-home brewers, and I can't have you here and not ask you, because one of the things that you, John, you've been doing for quite a few years now is the homebrew competition for the Stockport Beer Festival.
That's right, yeah.
And several of the beers from that go on to win awards both at the festival and elsewhere. Several of the people that won it have gone on to set up their own breweries.
That's right, yeah.
So I do want to just lead in from that onto this.
Yeah.
Do you think that your homebrew competition has had an impact on the local beer scene?
Well, obviously, I like to think so. Well, the last one was we did it for 5 years. But hopefully, if we have this festival next year, we're launching it again in November. So we did 5. The last one was judged in March 2020. I got the beers brewed this year. But we get 5 local breweries and good local breweries. We got Cloudwater on the host this time.
Wow, that's cool.
We had this time we had Cloudwater, Torside, Distant Hills, ex-Howard Town.
I've had some of their beers recently actually.
First Class, and Marble, of course. And we have 5 categories, quite broad categories, and we get all the, and we have a long lead-in time to it. I mean, it's launched in November, it's judged the following March, and a couple of Sundays. We used to judge them in the now closed Hope Tavern. I've worked out, the only thing, I was going to launch another competition for this festival, the time scale wasn't sufficient because the festival we just had in June. But the only thing I sorted out was where the beers were going to be judged, so no, that's going to happen. But it seems to be gaining a lot of traction. I've noticed over the 5 years we ran it, and we'll continue to run it hopefully, the standard of the home brewing increased hugely. I mean, lots more full mash brewers, and the beers we got were amazing. And yes, and it's always great to see some of the beers do well in the beer festival competition, and the beers, and the home brews actually their beer on the bar. And here we're in the Marble Arch, and we've got the speciality beer, Ogden's Foreign Export Stout. Simply, is a fantastic beer, and it's here in Cask and Keg. It's a wonderful beer, and it won silver in beer at the festival. And Joe, the head brewer, was just talking to before we started. They're going to brew it again in October. It's a fantastic beer. So yeah, I think it has inspired some people. I'd like to think. Yeah.
Two of the breweries that brewed it this year, First Class and Torside, are both ex-Manchester homebrew brewers.
They are, yes.
First Classes as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know
he
that.
won some national competition, I think.
That's another one. I can't believe I didn't mention them in one of my favourite breweries, because they helped get me through lockdown with all the free deliveries within a 10-mile radius.
Well, if I could do my favourite local breweries, I mean, I'm going to say one that's not in Greater Manchester. I'm going to say Torside up in New Mills. So they are fantastic.
They're more Manchester than some of the Manchester-based breweries.
They are, yes. I mean, their big beasts are fabulous, and I like probably to support the Petersgate Tap has Monsters Weekends.
Oh yeah.
And they get special rackings of all the monsters.
That would be amazing. I'm going to their festival in September actually, the Smoke Festival.
Oh, I'm going to that.
Are you?
On Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there. Track again, like you said. I think Track's brewery tap room has raised the bar for tap rooms in Greater Manchester.
Yeah,
I think it's phenomenal.
I agree.
That bar was started by Blackjack.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about
maybe
it.
even UK, like in terms of
Other Manchester Marble, I think, aren't putting foot wrong at the moment.
No.
I think they are just fantastic. I have a very big soft spot for Runaway.
Yes, me too, actually.
Runaway, just brilliant. I mean, I love what he's about to move to Stockport. The brewery's moving to Stockport. He's going to do more cask when he gets to Stockport, because if he goes to Stockport, he's more cask oriented.
I'm excited about that. I love Runaway.
He's going to have a really nice tap over 2 floors. It's going to be great. There's a courtyard at the back. It's going to be really good.
I hope they still make their saisons though, because I love their saisons.
Yeah. And Steelfish. I mean, the 2 guys who are really nice guys, but the beers are really good as well. Yeah. And of course, I think we ought to mention Steve's famous barrel aging program.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you can't not mention Steve's barrel aging program.
I mean, that as well, that brown ale that we had at yours on Saturday, Steve, that was amazing. And a lot of the tour really liked that as well, actually.
I'd also mention, of course, Balance Brewing and Blending, who do the wild and sour things. I mean,
I've not had any of their beers yet.
I've had one. I've got a bottle of it on my toe. They're brilliant.
I need to get my hands on some of that.
This is it. This is Balance. The guys behind Balance, one is a brewer at Squawk and the other one's a brewer at Track.
Squawk! I can't believe I didn't mention Squawk.
Oh, I know.
This is possibly one of the problems with Manchester. There are so many breweries that you do forget about all the ones that you really love.
And I'd also say, and the brewery's beer I normally try to see on the bar, because it's been around for so long, it's become part of the furniture, is Phoenix.
Yeah.
You forget what great, clean, hoppy beers Phoenix make. And because they've always been there, they've just kind of faded into the background. They don't deserve that, because their beers are so well made.
I think like Squawk are a little bit like that for me actually, because obviously I've not been around in Manchester as long as you, but whenever I see a Squawk beer I not always have to order it, because it's just
superb beers, aren't they?
So good. The Mallard at the moment is the one that I just see everywhere and I'm like, I'll have that.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Squawk. So I mean, you can't really. Every time there's of course there's those and there's those and there's those. You keep adding to
there's a lot of good beer in Manchester.
There really is. So we quickly mentioning about brew taps, and I said Blackjack were the first ones to start out with brew taps. They set the original bar, in my opinion, and I think then after that, they've all come, they're all sort of like doing what they can do, and as you say, I think Track may well have set the next bar. I don't think a lot of breweries will be able to match Track because they don't want to open 7 days a week with this whole thing.
Well, they've got a huge unit, and they're looking at the ex-post office unit with a vast amount of space. And there's huge south-facing outside space as well. I mean, they're falling on the feet with units. But what I do like about it has the vibe of a really good pub-like beer hall.
I like the fact that like you see families in there, you see dogs in there as well. Like it's very it's got a good atmosphere still. Even saying that, like Track's tap room's amazing, but I don't think it takes away from all the really good little tap rooms as well that we've got. Like you mentioned. Blackjack. I've not actually been to the new Blackjack.
Now it's open 3 days a week, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And and Alex Parkinson is the manager. And he's a good man.
Alex is a good man.
So, and I think, that's. I've been there once, but I want to go there more regularly. Now it's open more regularly. Wonder Beyond have started doing a tap 3 days a week as well.
I went there. 2 weekends ago actually they were open, and I walked in and Tom Bacon was sitting there at the bar. Welcome to me and my boyfriend. It was amazing.
I love Wonder Beyond beers. A lot of them are entertainingly crazy, but they're great fun, and they're all well made. They're all really well made beers, and I love what they do.
Do you know what the first thing Tom said to us when we got in the other day? Because obviously they're known for their quite wild, high percentage beers, but he said you've got to have this 2.7% lager we've got in cans, and I was like, okay, let's go for it. And it was amazing. So even though they're known for their really strong sort of wild stuff.
And I love their can and clip artwork as well.
Yes.
I mean, I think they have probably some of the best can and clip artwork in Greater Manchester. I think it's fantastic.
The artwork is absolutely amazing. I mean, same Alphabet are really well known for their artwork as well. That's one thing when we take people in there on the tours. They are always looking at the walls and looking at the cans as well, because there's always stacks and stacks of cans in there.
So I'm going to now ask you the three most difficult questions. Really putting you on the spot. If you could only drink beer from one of the local Manchester breweries going forward, which one would it be? Now the thing is, it may not be the one that's your most favourite beer, but you've got you're looking at the wide range that they may do, or the styles that they may do, or just the quality or anything like that. So I'm not going to ask you why, but if you could only drink drink beer from one brewery in the Greater Manchester area, which one would it be?
Squawk.
Marble.
You two didn't really take much time thinking about it. It just came to me straight away.
Well, I mean, I could drink this all day, every day.
This is amazing.
So a quick one on this. You're both drinking different beers. You're on pint. How would you describe it?
It's just so well made, so easy to drink. It's got a bit of bitterness, but just not too much. Bit of hops in the background, but it's just a very easy drinking beer. Not too strong as well, which is always good on a Wednesday evening.
Yep. And you're on, I can't remember the name.
Boorimbillo, yeah.
And how would you describe that?
Again, great hop character, good body, lovely hop character, not over bitter. I mean, but I do like my bitter beers. But what I like about it, it's got a wonderful clean finish. And I like my beers to have a clean finish, and this is, in many respects, perfect for that.
It's actually something Marble are very good at. It's very clean beer.
I was going to say, you can say the same about this actually as well.
So the second one, if you were to only be able to drink in one bar in Manchester that specialise in local beers, so there's many local breweries in that, but that's one of the ones that specialise in local beers, which one would you be in?
In Manchester?
Yeah, in the city.
Specialise in local beers?
Yeah. This seems to be taking more thought.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
It's very hard, isn't it? This one.
There aren't a lot of beers that specialise in local beers.
But there are quite a few that always have good range of local beers on.
Yeah.
I'd say probably Port Street Beer House for me.
Really?
I
didn't think they had many in the way of local beers.
They tend to have a good selection. Maybe that's not what they're best known for, but I think they've got a good selection of local beers, especially on cask. At least the last few times I've been in, anyway.
Well, this is perhaps a bit of a cheap. I'm going to say the Marble Arch.
Yeah, that's a bit of a cheat, but I'll go with it.
I mean, because I'll be well fed as well, you see.
What would you say, Steve?
Me? Possibly City Arms.
Oh, the City Arms is very good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do have to admit, I've only been to the City Arms a couple of times, so
Well,
maybe.
And
if
Cafe
I'm-
Beer Moth often has a lot of local beers.
Yeah,
and that's a
it does.
wonderful
I
place
do
to
love
drink.
Cafe Beer Moth.
Yeah,
actually.
I mean,
yeah.
for me, City Arms because my dad only drinks Guinness,
Ah, right.
and finding a good craft beer pub with local beers that also has on your mainstream beers, it's really difficult. And
Yeah.
City Arms do that incredibly well.
If I was going not city centre, I'd say rep my local 11 Shoe, which is Station Hop as well.
Yeah.
They always have a good selection, and they're actually going to be becoming the new Ventile Brew tap room
They are,
soon as
yeah.
well.
Are they?
So, yeah.
Well, if I was going to go out today, I'd say the Petersgate Tap in Stockport.
Yes. Yeah. That's also a great.
I mean,
place to go.
weekend next week, it's this Torside Cats and Dogs weekend. Because Torside do Cats and Cows and Dogs, which is 75 year old bottles, barrel aged, this, that, and the other, very strong things. And they've racked off pins of everything. And so there's about 10 beers. Crates, the list is insane, basically. Even the Torside guys who've never tried these beers on cast are going to go there on the Saturday evening to have a few. So yeah.
I might have to change my weekend plans.
It has to be serious.
So the hardest question then.
Oh, the harder, even harder.
Oh
question.
yeah. What is your favourite Manchester brewed beer? Current one, not past.
Favourite Manchester brewed beer?
This isn't a you can only drink this one forever. It's a what is your favourite current Manchester brewed beer?
Oh dear me,
That is so hard.
it is.
Do you know what? I've just bought 2 mini kegs of it, so I'm going to say Cask Sonoma. But
Yes,
specifically the Cask Sonoma.
yes, I think Cask Sonoma because it's wonderfully sessionable,
Yeah.
isn't it? Got all the hop character you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's got to be right up there for me too.
Yeah. I mean, pint is
Well, this
also very good.
mind you, this Bourimbola I could drink till the cows come out.
Yeah.
So I mean,
It is a very difficult question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there is so much really good beer made in Manchester.
I mentioned it already, but I am drinking the Squawk Mallard a lot at the moment as well, because that's. But I couldn't be confident enough to say it's my absolute favourite. But Sonoma, you can get it, you know, all the time.
now, if you'd asked me if you could only drink one beer ever again, then I could have answered that like that.
Oh, go on then.
Batham's Bitter from the Black
Yeah, but that's
Country.
not Manchester though, is
I
it?
know, but that's if you're going to drink one beer again, I just drink Batham's Bitter.
We all know with me it's special for you.
Yeah,
Right, well, thank you both.
Thank you, Steve.
that's been great.